All right. Well, let's have fun. Ooh. Hi there. How's the weather in China? Better than here, I hope. Okie dokie, let's go. This is week 4 of our young adult fiction and films class. Incidentally, I've been uploading these to my YouTube channel, as I mentioned before, but also to the Yuntek's e-class thing. So, in case you're interested to see it there, it'll be the same though. So, I don't recommend it too much. Okay. It should open separately, very good. Okay, good. Well, actually I need to open the first one because we didn't actually get through the entire first half of the reading itself. Well, this isn't even very long. Okay, good. Oops, no. It's right there. Can't you see it? I'm searching for the word chapter. There's the word chapter right here. Oh wait, they did it with spaces. I don't know if that's going to work or not. Yay! Okay, we had just finished, let me see exactly. The main last thing that happened was that we had Klaus, Sonny, and Violet Baudelaire fix a meal for Count Olaf and his acting troupe. And they used a cookbook from Justice Strauss, the neighbor, who was very generous and kind to them, and actually seems like really lonely too, by the way. And so they found a recipe for pasta puttanesca, which is a simple dish with homemade noodles and various ingredients of different kinds, as a kind of a spaghetti dinner. When they served the food, however, unfortunately, it turns out that Count Olaf had, in his mind only, asked for roast beef as the dinner. Probably he didn't give them enough money to buy roast beef, but still he was angry that they didn't make it. And in his anger, first he picked up Sonny, the little baby, high up, and he was already drunk before he went off to his rehearsal. And luckily, he got set down on the table. He set Sonny down on the table and slid her down the table on a tray. So when he refused to let anybody eat the pasta puttanesca, he said that the 3 orphans should clean up everything and put everything away, and then go to their beds. And Klaus, by this time, was very angry, and he says, "You said beds. There is only one bed, singular, for the 3 of us." And that made Count Olaf also very angry, and he struck Klaus across the face. It felt like his face was on fire. And that led them to a night of very sad feelings. And that was the end of the first episode of what we were watching. So let me run through and let's catch us up, because this the second installation, the second half of a series of unfortunate events that's done on Netflix is full of many things. More than half the book has to fit into the second half. Here it is. Count Olaf says, "Where is the roast beef?" And Violet said, "We didn't make roast beef, we made puttanesca sauce." Let me find that moment here. Oh, it's the bald man, right? Actually, one difference between the book and the series is that the people working for Count Olaf start off as being very bad, dangerous, scary people. In this version of Netflix, they're kind of cute. And I mean, not cute to look at, but they act kind of cute. Oh, here. That's right. I remember we talked about the ladles last time. There it is. Klaus had been glaring at the floor, trying to hide how upset he was, but at this, he could not remain silent. "You mean our bed?" he shouted. "You have only provided us with one bed." I skipped a small amount. Olaf says, "Well, if you want to buy more beds, you can go to the town and buy some." And they said, "You know very well that we don't have any money." And Count Olaf says, "Oh, of course you do. You have an enormous fortune." But Klaus reminds Olaf that money is not to be used until Violet's of age, old enough to come into the money, maybe 18 years old or so. So approximately 4 years. If he had only waited and acted nice for 4 years, maybe he could have got away with it okay. Here we go. In one sudden movement, he reached down and struck Klaus across the face. His glasses leaked from his face and skittered into his corner. Right, okay, good. And that basically was the end of chapter 4. Now we have chapter 5 here. So this is basically the division between the first half of the video and the second half. Here we go. Let me go through the main things. They cried for most of the night, but when they woke up, they were feeling a little better, which is something that does happen sometimes after you cry. Oh yes, and they want to see Mr. Poe, the one who's in charge of their money, and of course in charge of choosing Count Olaf as the one to be the guardian, because he was the closest living relative if you use a map, which is not what closest living relative means at all. Added to the story, we have a scene written by Lemony Snicket, which is good, demonstrating to us how come Mr. Poe decided to let Count Olaf be their guardian. It's not in the book at all, but it is a clever thing and explains something that was never made clear in the books. And I'll let the video do that for itself. Okay. They walked over to the bank and they met Mr. Poe. Mr. Poe was useless as usual. Klaus explains, very clearly, Count Olaf is a madman. We cannot stay with him. Violet says, he struck Klaus across the face. See his bruise? Yes, there's another one of these conversations. And we learn an important Latin phrase, in loco parentis. This Latin phrase means taking the role of a parent. So even though obviously Count Olaf is not their parent, specifically, he's acting as if he were the parent, and that is his role. Acting in the role of a parent, exactly right. Here's what Poe says. Whatever Count Olaf has done, he has acted in loco parentis, and there's nothing I can do about it. Your memory will be well protected by myself and the bank, but Count Olaf's parenting techniques are his own business, and he needs to get them out of the office. All right, chapter 6. Right. Count Olaf prepares some breakfast for the kids. The reason he did this is because he's trying to... the thing is, he heard that the orphans went to see Mr. Poe at the bank, and he wasn't really happy about that, obviously. He says, Mr. Poe told me that you appeared to have some difficulty adjusting to the life I have so graciously provided for you. I am very sorry to hear that. This is one thing that is always left out in the movie version and in this Netflix version. There's one thing about Count Olaf which is described often in the books, but not appearing on screen. And the thing is that Count Olaf's eyes are shiny and bright, the way they are when someone is telling a joke. We never really get that exactly. Or at least I never picked up on it. Oh, hey, thank you. Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much, Google. All right. And this is also the moment where Count Olaf brings up the idea of including the 3 children, or actually 2 of the children, in a performance of a play called The Marvelous Marriage by Al Funkoot. There is his name. And I hope you've already read this, but if you rearrange the letters of Al Funkoot, you get Count Olaf. Can you see it? People don't want to see it. Oh well, whatever. I think it's good wordplay. He does this a lot with names. The character that Violet plays is an important main character. She is to be the bride character in the play, marrying the character that Count Olaf plays. This sounds pretty suspicious, but they take a little time to understand what the trick is. So, the next thing to do is to see what happens next in chapter 7. Good. They are doing research about legal regulations related to marriage because they want to understand why Count Olaf is planning to have this drama with a marriage in it, starring Count Olaf and Violet. So they go to their neighbor, who is a justice, Justice Strauss. She's one of the high judges. This turns out to be really important later on too, by the way. And Justice Strauss is surprised. She says, "I thought you were interested in mechanical engineering, animals of North America, and teeth." Talking to the three. Are you sure you want to read those enormous law books? Even I don't like reading them, and I work in law. Yes, Violet lied. I find them very interesting, Justice Strauss. So do I, Klaus said. Violet and I are considering a career in law, so we are fascinated by these books. So they go and they read and they read and they read and they read, trying to understand some things. One of the books that they're reading is called Inheritance Law and Its Implications. And this describes the way that money can go from one person to another person after they die, or for some other reason. And of course, Klaus wants to understand, because he understands already that Count Olaf is very greedy and wants to get the money that the orphans are supposed to receive when Violet is old enough. And so he can learn more about what's going on. There, he did it again, nicer, instead of more nicely. Oh, except this time it's not Count Olaf, right. Okay, Klaus smuggled one of the books, putting it into his shirt to go back home to Count Olaf's place. And he keeps reading. Here's, oops. No, I'll get this mistake. This is something that Lemony Snicket likes to do once in a while to surprise us and get our attention. I'll just start reading this paragraph. The book was long and difficult to read, and Klaus became more and more tired as the night wore on. Occasionally, his eyes would close. He found himself reading the same sentence over and over. He found himself reading the same sentence over and over. He found himself reading the same sentence over and over. But then he would remember the way the hook hands of Count Olaf's associate had glinted in the library. Okay, and made some bookmarks. Okay, so this is one of Lemony Snicket's fun ways to play with words, and turns out pretty nice. There's another book that Klaus is carrying right now. It's called Nuptial Law. No, I'm sorry, I have a dyslexia. Holy moly, how do you pronounce that? See, I've always heard people say nuptial, but there's no U in it. Nuptial law, related to laws relating to marriage. The word nuptial means relating to marriage. Yes. Oh, and Count Olaf actually knows that word. Wow, that's an interesting thing. And Klaus has done so much reading, he has found the reason why Count Olaf wants to marry. Count Olaf's character is supposed to, is supposed to get married to Violet in a play. He figured it out. He got the plan very clearly in his head, which is remarkable for a almost 13-year-old boy. Okay. Don't want it to steep too long. All right. Now this is important, so please notice this here. The laws of marriage in this community are very simple, he read out loud. The requirements are as follows: the presence of a judge, the statement of "I do" by both the bride and the groom, and the signing of an explanatory document in the bride's own hand. Klaus put the book down and pointed at Count Olaf. If my sister says I do and signs a piece of paper while Justice Strauss is in the room, then she is legally married. This play you're putting on shouldn't be called a marvelous marriage. It should be called the menacing marriage. You're not going to marry Violet figuratively. You're going to marry her literally. And it's explained really well in the series, but I'll just mention, figuratively is when you describe something as if it were happening, but it's not actually happening. Like you say, oh, that teacher is a monster, because maybe they're very strict or mean or something. But it doesn't mean they're actually a monster. They're like a monster. But literally means that the words getting married is actually happening. That's what they're talking about here. This play won't be pretend, says Klaus. It will be real and legally binding. Count Olaf laughed. Your sister isn't old enough to get married. Klaus answers, and he's ready for this too. He says, she can get married if she has the permission of her legal guardian, acting in loco parentis. Klaus next reads an explanation as to why Count Olaf would choose to do this. Klaus turned to a different section of nuptial law. A legal husband, he read out loud, has the right to control any money in the possession of his legal wife. And then he looks and says, looks at Count Olaf and says, you're going to marry my sister to gain control of the Baudelaire fortune. Or at least that's what you planned to do. But when I show this information to Mr. Poe, your play will not be performed and you will go to jail. And Olaf says, I guess you found me out. I suppose you're right. I'll go to prison and you and the other orphans will go free. He says, why don't you go and talk to your sisters? And Klaus says, yes. And so Klaus explains all of this to the sisters. Now they're looking for Sunny. Can't find Sunny until they see her. This is awkward. Well, I guess we'll just follow the same pattern as last week and take a break now, and then in 10 minutes we'll resume. All right. Okay, China, listen here, we'll be right back.